increase their safety culture. All right, we got a recording in progress. I got the little message. All right, so I'm going to move on to a little bit about me, just in case you guys are curious. I also have my contact information here, and you guys can, I can also include that in the chat once this is done. I'll throw that out there if you want to reach out, if you just want to find out what my favorite movie is. I'm okay chatting with that stuff. My name is Charles Davenport. I'm a safety manager currently at E&J Gallo Bottling, and it's E&J Gallo. If you guys haven't ever heard of E&J Gallo, they have a very wide engrossing, large wine industry, global wine industry. And our bottling operation in Modesto is, from what I hear, the biggest bottling operation in the world for wine specifically. We've got some breakout hits here. One of them is High Noon. You guys have probably seen High Noon like everywhere. High Noon is like our big deal right now. It's a huge E&J Gallo product. And of course, you know, with the increase of production, people love wine, right? With the increase of production needs, there's also the increase in risks. So they were looking a few years back, they were looking for a safety manager who had kind of maybe the drive and, you know, maybe as hyper as I am, to bring into the fold and kind of help out with their safety program. They already had an extensive safety network, a lot of really good people in safety. Some people in this forum probably know people from E&J Gallo, specifically Derek Jarvis, who was part of the safety center, the kind of cool, airy, distant people in the robes at the safety center. Derek was one of those folks. So that's a little bit about me in my current position. I don't have actually a bunch of acronyms after my name. I have a BA in English literature. My start in safety, I know, right? My start in safety actually happened after working for many years in a very high level group home organization, which I'll cover here pretty soon. I'll kind of dive into that and how it correlates with my safety experience. But I went to school to be a teacher. I wanted to teach kids. And then after working with kids for almost a decade, I was like, I need a break from kids. So I got my BA in English Lit, and I found a job making pretty decent money as a production operator in plastics. And I was a forklift driver for a few years. I was driving that forklift and I was a production operator. So I've been in the mix with our production teams. I've been there. I was also a construction worker back in the day for about 5 years, framing houses. So again, like I know the safety professional perspective and I know the production team member perspective. Like I've been there, and probably a lot of people in this team have been there. But it's been giving me the ability to really develop kind of rapport with team members out there. So I actually got involved in safety when the regulatory and compliance manager in plastics asked me to attend a job safety analysis week-long event in Chicago. We flew over there, we did the event, and on the way back, I was like, listen, I love safety now. I love safety. I'm all about it. I'm gonna ditch everything and I'm gonna pursue a safety career. And then that decision spurred me on as an EH&S technician at Scholey IPN. And then it went more into kind of a specialist role. And then it bumped into safety management in a grain and feed industry here in California and in Texas. And then from there, I went on to Dole Packaged Foods. I'm sure everyone in this room knows Dole Packaged Foods. I worked with them for a few years before I got the call from Gallo. And then I decided to move on up here and kind of help them out. I had great experiences at every single one, helped reduce their injury rates at every single one by engaging in team culture, lots of great feedback. I didn't leave any of those organizations in a bad state. It was all just a wonderful kind of thing, great learning experience. Like I said before, I was an extrusion technician for a few years. I was a forklift operator, but during that time when they found out I liked to talk and I had a degree in English and I went to school to be a teacher, they were like, let's put this guy in safety training. So even before I was a safety technician, I was training forklift. I was forklift safety. I was a forklift trainer. And then I was teaching JSA, job safety analysis or job hazard analysis training for team members, even before I stepped into the safety role. So I started getting really excited about it. Active safety committee member. That's another way that you can get your team members engaged as well. Life stuff, just a little bit about me. I'm a busy dad. So I have a teen son. His name is Lalo. He's right there. He's got his hoodie on and his hat. If you guys can see him, he's an awesome kid. And there's my wife and my twin toddlers. So we had twin toddlers in 2018, and to think that I have twins in my mid 40s is just crazy. But it is what it is. So life is pretty busy, but it's fun. I'm a hobby musician, and I shamelessly plugged my YouTube channel here. If you guys are interested in seeing me rock some acoustic guitar, I do that. I write my own music. I'm also a motorcyclist, and I love that the Safety Center in Sacramento has motorcycle safety classes, because yes, you can ride a motorcycle safely. You absolutely can be a safe driver on a motorcycle. And then I like the other stuff, hiking. You probably could have guessed that from all my other stuff: hiking, fishing, and perpetually, and I mean perpetually, cracking dad jokes. Perpetually, almost all the time, I've got a dad joke just sitting in my pocket, just ready to roll. That's a little bit about me. I'm going to move into our content now, and if I'll put my contact information in the chat later. If anybody ever wants to reach out to me, I'm game. Disclaimer. There will be 3 disclaimers during this presentation. 3. 1, there will be quotes and definitions. So yawn break now. Get it out of the way. Yeah, get it out of the way. It's going to be, there's going to be a couple of things, and I'm going to start off this training with a few definitions that it's good for the team to have. So safety culture, we're going to be talking about safety culture a bit today. And again, this is my personal experience with safety culture, team engagement, just sharing some of the way that I've been able to help our team kind of be successful in all facets of a general industry. Just my own personal experiences. Preach into the choir here, I get it. But if you haven't seen this quote before, it's a really good quote. I believe it's from OSHA. At least I've been told by the World Wide Web, it's from OSHA. Safety cultures consist of shared beliefs, practices, and attitudes that exist at an establishment. Culture is an atmosphere created by those beliefs, attitudes, etc., which shape our behavior. And it really is a good definition of culture on a whole. Not just safety culture, but just culture in general. If you'd like to know about other people's cultures, this is kind of a good way that represents the definition of culture. The next one: you will not drive safety culture effectively without balanced engagement. That's me. That's a Charles quote right there. It's official. I've officially put a Charles quote on a training. And then get your butt out of your office. Get your butt out of your office. Go interact with folks in the field. Go. That's also me. That's a quote for me. So I'm sharing that tidbit of knowledge from folks because I have met, drumroll, safety professionals that only like to stay in their office, that they're almost 100% administrative safety professionals. I'm telling you is that if that's what you do and that's your kind of gig, if it works, it works, I guess. If it works, it works. The majority of the time, it doesn't work. From what I've seen, it doesn't work. You need to be out in the field. You need to be experiencing your people. You need to connect with your team. You need to be seen. And a lot of that stuff I'm going to cover today, and some of my own personal experiences and my guidance, maybe even potential guidance for a lot of new people on this call. One of the things that we discussed earlier was the fact that credentials, all of those acronyms, if you got an acronym heavy email headline, awesome. You're super learned. You could probably quote regulatory standards just like that. All that stuff's good. It's great, but you do need interaction on the field. You do actually have to have that experience to become a successful safety professional and to lead your operations team members into a successful safety program, successful safety culture. So one of the things that when Warren sent me this is good for the team type of a thing in bullet points, one of them was create an activity for the group to kind of think about. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same old boring safety check. Like every single safety training you've ever been on has one of these safety checks where you look at a picture and you go, hey, what's wrong here? I'm not going to, I'm not going to break out into groups or anything like that. I'm just going to kind of pose it for the audience while I'm talking so that you guys can take a look at this picture. Maybe you've seen this picture. Again, it's something that I got from the web. And I've got my little, so I'm not copyright infringing. I've got little links to all of those pictures if I've got anything that I pulled off the net. And the first thing that I have for this group, and you could just think about it or discuss it amongst your teams that are watching this presentation, is, what's the first thing that you notice in this picture? And I know everybody's noticing the same thing. I know everybody's noticing the same thing. Flammable gas sign. Oh yeah, there it is right there. It's bright. It's red. It's a big sign. Smoking next to the flammable gas line? Absolutely. It's crazy. It's crazy. Propane bottles strewn about? Absolutely. If you look at the floor down there, you see propane bottles everywhere. It's a very kind of clustered, very flammable environment. Something that you guys might not have noticed, something that we don't think about a lot because we tend to hyper focus on the person doing the unsafe behavior, is the pedestrians, visitors, or other people in your business that are within proximity to a hazard that could put their life at risk. Anybody notice this? Just wondering. I just throwing this out there to the group. Anybody notice that dude is rocking all of his PPE? He's got all of his PPE on. He's got a classy or higher hard hat. He's got full ANSI rated safety glasses. I can see them. I blew up this picture. I can actually see that he's wearing those. He's got a full body harness. He didn't even need to be harnessed on, but he's got a full body harness on. And yeah, I bet you anything, he's probably wearing the ATSM hard toe boots. I would be willing to put money on the fact that he's got steel toe boots. This dude is decked out in PPE. It's kind of another reason, right, that in the hierarchy of control that we call PPE, the least effective form of control, necessary, but the least effective form of control, according to the hierarchy of controls, for good reason. At least he's got some water bottles nearby, right? At least he's got so for heat illness prevention, he's got access to water. That's cool. And then maybe that water would, slightly buffer that explosion or the fire if it were to happen, if you just open them all at once and just started shaking them out, who knows? But either way, he's got something kind of going on there. The question that I have, I guess, before I move on to the next slide, I kind of jumped the gun there. The question I have for the team is, if you would have seen this dude in not smoking 10 feet away in a completely different environment, would you guys think that this guy just exemplified safety? You'd be like, this guy, look at him. Oh my God, he's got all this PPE on. This guy is safety 101. Just look at him, head to toe, safety. This guy's sparking up a cigarette next to a potential explosion that might take off half a city block, but he's a representative of safety. The only reason why I did this activity was to show that sometimes looks can be perceiving. And then sometimes if you focus on kind of one thing and you don't engage your team members directly on safety, we're going to talk about a lot of positive reinforcement techniques and stuff like that through this training. They can exemplify safety all you want, but they're not fully representing safety. They're not safe for themselves, and they're not safe for the people around them because they're making those conscious decisions, regardless of being decked out in all of that PPE. So, safety engagement 101. What I like to do when I talk to people about safety, when I bring team leads and supervisors and managers into a room, do an event, or I do like a leadership kind of safety fundamentals kind of a type of thing, I always go back to the basics of safety. I always try to make it as easy as a concept as possible. I don't spit a bunch of regulatory standards to them. Those will come, sure, those will come as part of your education. But what I tell them is to focus on the basics. And one of the biggest things for me, it's a huge concept for me, is that safety is a practice. Reduce that complexity a bit. Focus on that one simple truth. Safety is a practice. And here's another definition. So Merriam-Webster defines practice: to carry out, apply, quote, practice what you preach. This is a big one for me. It's huge. It's inherent in my personality. Anyone in E&J Gallo or anybody in other safety fields that I've worked in would probably tell you that I might as well just have this tattooed on my neck. Practice what you preach, right? To do or perform often, customarily or habitually. To perform or work at repeatedly so as to become proficient. Habitual, proficient. And to train by repeated exercises. So there's some themes here when it comes down to the word practice: repeated, habitual, and practice what you preach, right? Always. As a safety professional, it behooves you to be the personification of your entire safety culture and your safety program altogether. Even if you don't maybe particularly agree with some of that stuff, even if you're like, hey, I don't like this hard hat, it sucks. If your work environment requires that PPE because you haven't been able to effectively engineer or eliminate out those controls and you have to do it, then guess what? You're doing it, right? Doesn't matter if you look goofy, doesn't matter what, this is probably the last line of defense protecting you from a head injury. So you got to do it. You got to do it all the time. You can't let your team members catch you slipping. But again, I'm going to move into that a little bit in some upcoming slides. The gentleman so willing to explode in the previous slide, like I said before, if you were to see him in any other given circumstances, 10 feet away, 10 minutes before this, you would have thought this dude just exemplifies safety. It's probably because nobody's ever engaged him the way that we should be engaging people. So for me, I like to talk about my folks out there, the people that I engage with. I think of them as my audience, and the audience is always watching. They're always watching. They're honed in. If we think a safety culture is something we want our people to embrace, think of people as your audience. And, how do you engage that audience? How do you engage them and persuade them to think safety and then work safely? If safety is in slogan only. So we talked about slogans in our breakout room, and it was cool. There's some good positive things about slogans. Slogans are great. But if you got safety in your culture as a slogan only, and not in practice, then it's going to be an issue. If safety is in signage only, if you've dumped all of your safety resources into administrative controls, and you just got a place where it's just nonstop signage, but people are willing to bypass that signage and go do something unsafe. If safety is not practiced consistently by everyone, including leadership, and when I say leadership, I'm talking leadership, like top level leadership. If your director walks into your establishment and he's too good to follow the safety rules because of his salary base or where he sits in an office, then you're never going to have a strong safety culture. It's just not going to work. And then if we look the part like this guy, but we don't act the part. Sorry, my screen froze for a second. All right, how do you reach your audience? I split this up into two parts, part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is a personal approach. And this is a big deal for me. And I mentioned to this audience that I would be coming back and talking about this little kind of portion of my life for a minute, to show how that correlates with me as a safety professional now. That's probably the one thing that I enjoy when I hear about other people's backgrounds specifically. Sometimes it's not about their safety background. It's not about their certifications or how long they've been in the field of safety. Some of it has to do with their personal experiences and other fields that relate now to their safety mentality and their approach to safety. You'd be surprised at how many various ways that those places and those previous work environments actually helped form them into the safety professional they are today. My bio mentions facility manager, childcare worker. How does this connect with safety engagement and my own personal philosophies now that I can maybe hopefully share with the team if you guys are willing to listen and maybe glean from some of this content? There are some similar techniques between childcare work and being a safety professional, maybe even being a leader specifically. As a childcare worker, I was a childcare worker for about 7 years. I was a facility manager of a high level group home organization. In California, there's 14 levels of care in group home facilities. My facility was a level 11. And it doesn't go 11, 12, 13, 14. At least at the time when I worked there, it just jumped from 11 and then you went to 14. 14 is the level where you have padded rooms. 11's pretty high. So we had clientele that were sometimes violent. We'd have clientele that were verbally aggressive. But these were all children who suffered from a wide variety of mood and physical psychological disorders. And you had to the best of your ability as a childcare worker, you had to develop techniques to make a connection with these children and help get them prepared for life. Because once they turned 18, they would be out on their own. And guess what? There's not a very high success rate anywhere across the nation once some of these children kind of go out into the street. So it was important, it was pivotal for you to develop rapport with your clients. It was pivotal, like we were talking about in our break room, in our breakout session just a minute ago. It was pivotal for you to understand how to increase engagement through positive reinforcement. That was vital. If you didn't do these two things, establish rapport, and in the childcare industry, they call it therapeutic rapport. But if you didn't establish any rapport with your clients, and if you didn't increase engagement through some sort of means of positive reinforcement, then what you're not doing is you're not engaging them in a positive way, and you're just going to be like that person who just yells all the time. And they just get used to you yelling, and they get used to you coming down hard on them. And again, you guys can already probably making these connections, right? With working with children and then being a leader, and specifically a safety leader out in the field. The one strong connection, right? The huge strong connection, developing rapport, positive reinforcement. It's a chemical. It's the firing of the synapses in your brain. It's called dopamine. It's your body's warm and fuzzy neurotransmitter. And I don't have to be a scientist. A disclaimer two, I am not a clinical psychologist, nor do I have an education in that field. Like I said, I have a degree in English literature. I'm just a dude with experiences that worked in a field where you had to utilize these techniques to get through to your audience. It's the same thing with people on the floor. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I've helped teams be successful throughout the years, is because of that experience that I had in childcare work in a high-level childcare facility. It just kind of worked. It worked. So similar techniques, number one on that list above, developing rapport with your audience. Developing rapport with your audience, it makes your team more comfortable. If you get off your butt, like I said in the Charles quote, get off your butt, get out of the office, go into the field, go talk to your peeps. It makes your team feel more comfortable, and it helps them feel safe and secure when they come approach you. If they don't think that you're approachable, if you're not willing to listen to them, if you're not willing to take that time to go meet them, introduce yourself, engage in conversation with them, they're not going to come approach you. They're not going to approach leadership. So this is something that you need to spread to your leadership teams and ensure that they know that they need to be approachable. It helps your team develop empathy, or it helps you develop empathy and understanding skills. The more that you do it, a practice, the more that you practice this, the more that you can develop empathy and understanding skills. There's some people out there that need this. They need it. And it's just a hard truth. They may be unsafe out on the floor, and you can bring the hammer down, consequences all the time. But some of these folks, they just need somebody to talk to help make them understand why it's so important that they work safely. And taking that time to do them makes a big impact. It gives your team a visual of their safety representative. It makes you real to them. And this is big news. If you just sit in an office all the time and your team doesn't even know who you are, then you're not real to them. You're a fictional person. You're a slogan on the wall. You're not real. And it can be a very simple practice conversationally. It really can. It could be a few minutes of your time scheduled. Hell, you could even put it on your Outlook calendar. Having conversations with people and developing that rapport with them individually, it doesn't take a whole lot of time at all. And some people think, oh my God, this is going to be a huge thing for me to do, to go out into the field and go talk to people. I'm not asking you to go out and talk to all 1,500 of your employees all in one day. Just go out there and incrementally, right? How do you eat an elephant? That's the biggest question, right? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, my friends. Increasing engagement with positive reinforcement. Activities that help develop rapport. These are some good ones, personal experience ones that, again, I'm sharing with this team. You may have your own, again, I might be preaching to the choir. You might have your own techniques, but these are my techniques. Take a moment each week to walk the field and engage in at least 3 positive safety conversations. And I mean it, like actually look if you need to. I mean, if you really have to look a lot to find some people, then you might have like a bigger problem. But I'm sure that you can walk the field and you can find at least 3 people a week that you can go engage in an effective safety conversation with them. This is super important, and it's a great tool. And if you carve out some of your time, it's very beneficial. For me, at least here in E&J Gallo, and if any of my E&J Gallo peeps are joining in this, the kind of running joke in EJ Gallo is that, you're always kind of perpetually 2 weeks behind. And it really kind of feels that way, but that's what it is, being a safety professional, just being a professional in this field. You're always kind of busy. You're doing busy work. Sometimes you're inundated with administrative work. You have to carve out that time to go talk to your people. Temperature check. This is a good one. I love this one. And this is actually what I mentioned at the safety symposium last month. And I had fun and I got some good reactions back from it. But it's a very, very fundamental philosophy of mine. Reach out to the saltiest people with some positive reinforcement. There might be, I'm not going to throw out any stereotypes there or whatever, but if you've got a 6'4", 300-pound dude full of tattoos and you are afraid to go talk to that person about their safe behavior, you are missing out in a huge way. Or if you've got somebody who's always got the frowny face and you're unwilling to go have a conversation with that person, you may be missing a key piece of your safety culture there. Somebody who's an influencer, somebody who really just wants you to come talk to them. They may look intimidating, but that's just how they look. Maybe they want you to come talk to them. Maybe that kind of salty attitude is just an initial defense mechanism, and you can break through that barrier easily by just going up to them and telling them they're doing a good job and thank them for working safely. Communicate the importance of safety as, and this is a big thing for me too, as this is important to me that you work safely. This is important to me as well as the organization, right? The last thing you want to do is walk up to somebody and say, hey, I need you to have a hot work permit while you're welding over here because the company says so. That's because I said so. You're not explaining why it's important. It should be important to you. If you're a safety professional and your team member safety isn't important to you, then you might be in the wrong field. And I hate to break it to you, but you might be in the wrong field. It needs to be personal. You need to have some sort of personal stake in the safety of your team members. Personal reflection and experiences help. Use those experiences. Go out into the field, spark up a conversation with people, and then use some of those personal reflections and those experiences to engage in that conversation. I have walked up to people before and started conversations about the band on their t-shirt. It might be a band that I enjoy, and I'll start that conversation by talking about that band for a minute, and then I bleed it into, hey, I noticed that you always wear your safety glasses, and I just want to thank you for doing that. It's very important to me that you do that. That sort of thing. It's the gold star effect. Leading into this, dopamine, the gold star sticker. Disclaimer 3, this is my last disclaimer, my final disclaimer. I'm not a neuroscientist. I only play one in films. I've never played one in films. I know this because I've read this. This is information that you can simply Google. It's very well-known information. And when we used it in the field that I was in before, in childcare work, it was very prevalent in that field. Positive reinforcement can spread that neurotransmitter, dopamine, in the brain. It forms and reinforces new safety habits, making them more likely to reoccur. That's the most important part of the sentence. It forms and reinforces safe habits, making them more likely to occur, even with those salty people. Positive reinforcement feels good. I got this off the web. I love this quote. This is great. Positive reinforcement feels good. It literally makes you feel good. So it causes the brain to release that dopamine. This triggers the reward pathway and the neural pathway for the behavior, action, thought. When both pathways are triggered together, it strengthens them even more. And this is why positive reinforcement works. This is why positive reinforcement works. And when I say balanced engagement, I mean balancing it with accountability and with positive reinforcement. And you're going to have an increase in safety culture out there. So how to reach your audience, part 2. Organizational approaches. So we talked about personal approaches, and personal approaches kind of bleed into organizational approaches as well. Engagement at your organization can be done in these ways. And I'm going to elaborate here on some slides. Demonstrate realistic commitment. And this is a big thing for me. The commitment needs to be realistic. You've got some safety professionals, and I met these people. You got some safety professionals, you're like, you know what, I'm going to dedicate 70 hours a week to go out on the floor, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to make these giant like 10-foot banners and put them out everywhere. And then I'm going to make sure that all engineering fixes get fixed tomorrow. And I'm going to go demand that my VP dedicates $1.3 million into creating all these safety fixes by the end of the week. And none of those are realistic. None of those are SMART goals, right? They're not feasible. So you need to demonstrate realistic commitment. And sometimes that can be as simple as being the picture of safety. Go into that a little bit. Avoid competing priorities. We're going to talk to that a little bit. Finding ways to reduce that red tape. Guide your leaders in a firm but fair approach to safety. I love this. This is another thing that I might get tattooed on my neck, firm but fair, right there. Know when to individual praise and group praise. This is something I'm going to focus on just a little bit. And then, of course, be seen. That's, if you don't know, that's a big part of me right now. You haven't been listening at all. 1, commitment across the board. It needs to be visible and consistent. It has to be consistent. That's probably the biggest thing, right? We can put slogans up, we can put signage up. Has to be consistent in practice. This is where many companies fail. I've seen them fail. You just read about it if you want to. Visible leadership commitment needs to be practiced, not just preached, by all facets of leadership across the entire organization. Like I said, doesn't matter what your salary range is, doesn't matter where you sit, doesn't matter how fancy your suit or your car is, you have to follow the exact same rules that your production team members are following at all times, or you're going to lose that culture just like that. Just like that. How many times have you guys seen a police officer? I've seen one. How many times have you guys seen a police officer talking on a cell phone while they're driving? And your brain immediately goes, look at this guy, right? You've immediately dropped about 10% in your faith in that police department because you're like, these guys are not doing what they're basically preaching to us to do. How effective is that sign on the right here, posted in each department or work area? How effective is this sign if the manager standing underneath it isn't wearing required PPE for that area? The answer is not effective at all. If your team members are out there and they're watching somebody in your leadership team not practice what they preach right directly under a sign that says safety first, you've destroyed your safety culture just like that. How about a safety professional? I've known safety professionals in my life that don't rock all of their PPE, that they're like, I'm busy. Guess what? Your audience is watching you, and that can be detrimental to your safety culture more than you know. Your best approach as a safety leader is to show your commitment to safety and establish an expectation from your audience by leading by example, always at all times. And if you forget, if like you rush out to your work environment, you forget your safety glasses, we're all human, it happens. But when somebody comes up to you and says, hey, you need to have your safety glasses on, don't start by getting angry and being like, I'm a safety professional here. I know this, it was a mistake. Do this. Thank you. I really appreciate you looking out for my safety. Thank you very much. And that's going to be a huge thing. Again, it's going to release that dopamine. It's going to be positive reinforcement. No competing priorities. So from an organizational approach, this is number 2. Who wins the showdown? The showdown between safety and production. Look at these pictures right here on the right. You see where it's safety and you got production? 2 different people fighting against each other. OK Corral, they're the same people. That's surprise. They're the exact same people in 2 different positions. The safety and production can be a team. They can work together. But if you've got competing priorities, if you're like, listen, we got to get this product out now. And again, I'm preaching to the choir here. I mean, you're not saying safety first, but you've got slogans everywhere and t-shirts and hats and stuff like that. You're not driving that right message home. You're not. There shouldn't be a competing priority here. The safety of your team should always be your number 1 priority. And you don't have to do this by creating barriers and silos. You can do this by getting the team together and then saying, hey, we're all doing the same thing here. How do your team members perceive these silos? You need to break down that silo. You need to make sure that your team member knows that you're on the same team as production and vice versa. Have you asked your team members if they see it anyway? There's no harm in that. We were talking earlier in our breakout room about unions and how unions can be a little difficult sometimes. It kind of can seem like they're a little aggressive and stuff like that. But I don't think that there would really be any union out there that would be offended by you just asking employees how they perceive safety in production on your plant. Just go out and take a little personal survey. Use that as your conversation starter. Develop rapport that way. Consistency is key. If you lose that consistency, you automatically lose your audience. So if you're like, hey, we're not even going to put stuff out there to mitigate this hazard because, production, we need production and I need a paycheck. And then the next day you're like, hey, hold on a second. We need to make sure to be safe all the time. That's not being consistent. And your audience, they're watching you, just like watching this movie. They're watching you and they're watching that message. As safety professionals, it's our job to ensure leadership is on the right path. You might have to be that guiding force here. You might have to develop rapport with them to make sure that they kind of understand where you're coming from and what your culture should be aiming for. Be an influencer. That's probably the biggest thing that we need to do as safety professionals. We could be that regulatory expert. We could pull out all of the Title VIII regulations if we need to help us, boost up things. But ultimately, you need to be an influencer. But just don't be afraid. If you need to get dirty with some of the good old-fashioned regulatory quoting. Sometimes you got to go there. Sometimes you got to convince people, right? You can try to develop rapport with leadership as much as possible, but sometimes it just takes some good old-fashioned 1910.28 says this and this and this. It just needs to be done sometimes. Opportunities are identified and approached promptly. That's a great way to reach your audience and to increase safety culture. You have to find a way to reduce that red tape. You might have to be an influencer. You might have to be a cheerleader. You might have to convince people, even people at way higher levels than you, to kind of do the right thing. But it's just what you have to do as a safety professional. From personal experience, remember when I said that I was a machine operator, a films technician, and forklift operator? I know the feeling that operators have on the floor. Like, I've been in those trenches, right? Some of you have too. From personal experience as a team member in operations, this is key component to increasing safety culture, is doing something kind of prompt, but the message can kind of get lost the longer it takes to do something about that problem. When your team members are waiting and they're waiting and they're waiting, hey, we've had an air hose, a compressed air hose, and it's been leaking air and somebody put duct tape on it. Can you guys fix that for us? Week goes by. Oh yeah, we'll get to it. Nothing happens. And folks on the floor start to wonder, hey, what's the priority here? What's really the priority? Red tape can be the safety professionals spending too much time convincing an organization to do the right thing. If you are spending a week convincing somebody to fix that compressed air hose, or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and that's all you're doing, you're doing that, then you have a pretty deep-seated problem within your organization. And meanwhile, you've got your team members still waiting. All right, when's this going to get done? When's somebody going to do something about it? When are they going to prioritize our safety? Sometimes when red tape is blocking you from eliminating a hazard, from fixing that right off the bat, start thinking about how it can be mitigated. That's a strong word that we use all the time, mitigation. Get your audience involved. Get your team members involved. Ask them, how do we mitigate this? Give me some ideas. I know I'm the safety professional here, but you guys work in the field. You're my experts. You're my subject matter experts. How do we get better at this? And mitigation could be something simple. A trip hazard could be mitigated with a delineator, for instance, if you can't engineer it out. If you're doing a construction assignment and you've got a need to roll out an extension cord across a walking working surface and it has to be done, you can deviate traffic. That's mitigation technique. You can throw out a bunch of delineators so people's eyeballs go to that delineator while you try to figure it out, while you order that platform that goes over it. You can do things like that for the time being. Follow that hierarchy of control. 4, a firm but fair perspective wins respect and drives your culture. A fair and steady accountability system goes a long way to increase safety culture. And that's another way for you to engage with your audience and to increase engagement. Remember when I said earlier, I said one of my quotes was there has to be balanced engagement. Balance means positive reinforcement and accountability when necessary. Being a firm but fair leader is the best way for your leadership team to increase safety culture out there. Without consistency, your audience fails to believe in your commitment to safety. This is another way for leadership to practice safety, not just throw slogans into the air and hope it sticks, right? If you walk out on the floor, you or your leadership team walks out on the floor and somebody says, hey, like I feel really unsafe doing this. Sparks are flying from this machinery. It's flying right now. And you go, huh, that's interesting because safety is number one here. And then you just walk away. You've lost your audience. They're gone. They're gone. As safety professionals, you may have to rely on frontline leadership to hold people accountable, but you can assist in that overall message. You can guide them. You can lead them. And then remember, this is really important. Sometimes people forget this. It happens. Remember, your frontline leadership, they may need that same rapport that your production team members need. They may need that same positive reinforcement that we rely so heavily on leadership that sometimes we forget, sometimes they need a safety hug. Bring it in, right? COVID friendly, right? Bring it in. This is important. I trust your judgment. I'm just going to give you a couple of some constructive criticism, and then help you engage in the safety culture with your team. But you're doing a great job. Give them that kudos, and it's going to bleed out. It's going to bleed out onto your team. Right now, we're discussing that right now at E&J Gallo. How do we get our leaderships some hugs so they feel like that, they feel good about their performance, and that kind of bleeds out to the team. Celebrate the individual's commitment to safety. We talked about this during our breakout group. Use group safety praising, but use it carefully. Use group safety praising carefully. You can do it. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying use it carefully. And imagine this scenario here. This is real. This isn't the same as the experience that I've had, but this is pretty similar. And I've seen this in videos, and I've talked to people where this happened. So I've constructed this scenario for you guys. Imagine you have 3 team leads: Juan, Damien, Julie. Juan constantly strives to commit to the safety program, constantly, all the time. It takes hard work and patience on his part and the part of his team. His production numbers are a little bit lower than Damien's currently, but Juan's team sees injuries reduce significantly. Damien, on the other hand, his team fails to commit to the safety program, but they make record production. This skyrocket through the roof. And there are more injuries on his shift than the others. Does this sound familiar already? Did anybody been through this? I'm sure there has been some people. Julie, on the other hand, she wants to commit to the safety, but is leaning towards Damien's way. She's like on the cusp. She's leaning towards Damien's way of doing things because she sees. She follows the safety rules begrudgingly, but she sees, hey, Damien's getting Damien and the team, they're getting all the praise. You're getting all the goodies. At the end of the month, the department manager and the safety professionals, they all get together in one big room, and they get all the teams together, all the team leads, and they congratulate everybody for reducing injuries and for working safe. And they give everybody a t-shirt that says, I work safe. Additionally, Damien's team gets an extra reward, a certificate and gift cards for best production that month. Great job, Damien. Imagine how it feels to be Juan, who's constantly committing to safety in his team, and they're standing right next to Damien's team members who fail to wear their PPE, fail to lock out, tag out when they need to. They take shortcuts all the time. And this dude is rocking the same I work safe t-shirt as me. That's crazy. That's a good way to damage your safety culture altogether. What you need to do is you need to start dedicating your time to increasing safety culture in Damien's field. And you need to start congratulating Juan's team on working safely, regardless of those productions being a little bit lower, because we all know in the safety field, once things start getting consistent and safe, then efficiency rises, right? So this is where you can kind of lose your audience. And if you witness a similar situation, you know what I'm talking about. So safety leadership on the floor, administrative comfort zone. I touched on this a little bit before. People who have said this to me, I spend 80% of my time in the office. I get it. But a safety professional's worst enemy is aloofness. I talk about this a lot. When you're aloof to people, you're not real. You're a slogan on the wall. You need to be on the floor and you need to try to find a way. I know it can be difficult because your organization might be dumping a lot of administrative tasks on you. You need to find a way to balance that and spend more time on the floor. You can't spend 80% of your time in your office. You can't as a safety professional. There are people that they never see you, or maybe they never even see their frontline leadership spread these messages. They think, I didn't have anyone I could bring this issue to. I just never saw anyone. I talk amongst my team, but I never see anybody that I can approach. That nobody's ever come develop rapport with me. Or I thought safety was just a corporate thing. I thought that's just what you guys do up there. You guys create slogans and then we see your big banners on the wall. This is an opportunity. Reintroduce yourself to your audience, and while you're at it, reintroduce the frontline leaders as people to go to for safety concerns. This is big for me. I'm a firm believer that your frontline leaders should be safety professionals, and we should be teaching and guiding them to be safety professionals. You're going to run yourself ragged if everybody's constantly coming to you with their safety concerns. You need to be able to create some trust with your leadership group and have them be your safety professionals out on the floor in your absence. It just needs to be done. Additionally, this is your time for positive reinforcement. And then we're gonna do a couple of activities. I still have a few minutes left. So we're gonna do a couple of very simple activities before I cut out. And you guys might like this because they are very, very simple. Activity 1, get up. Get up, go out into the field if you're able. Go out into the field. 1, 2, pick someone you have not spoken to yet. 3, introduce yourself. 4, engage in a conversation, any conversation. Find a way to establish rapport with that person. Hey, I really like are those Timberland Pro Impacts? Those are awesome boots. I really like those boots. I wear those boots too. They got like awesome anti-fatigue stuff. Hey, it's that t-shirt where it says Tool. I love Tool. Tool's an awesome band. They're great. I saw them in concert 2 years ago. Hey, by the way, I notice you're always rocking your headgear. You're always doing a great job. Really good. Comment on what they're doing safely, just like that. Use that as an opportunity to establish some rapport with your audience. Get on their level, right? Talk to them. Share common experiences, develop rapport, and then comment on what they're doing safely. Increase that dopamine. Those synapses start firing in their brain. And guess what? They want to do it again, right? They want to see you again. They want to get that reinforcement. They want that gold star sticker. Some examples would be watching somebody lifting safely. Great job lifting safely. You didn't pivot while you were turning at the waist. Good job. Nicely done. Wearing all PPE correctly, performing tasks safely, using a ladder safely. That's a big one that I do all the time. If I see somebody using 3 points of contact on a ladder, I'll be like, thank you for doing that. That's really important. I'm so glad that I saw you do that. Complete an inspection. Sometimes we forget about those inspections, but we got a team member. Sometimes you got team members that they don't pencil whip. They really do dedicate time to complete that inspection on maybe that powered industrial truck every single time. And you need to commend them for that. Activity 2. Very similar. It's almost the same exact activity. It's just minor changes. 1, get up, go out into the field. I'm going to stress this so much. I've got a couple minutes left. And I'm going to stretch this so much. Get up, go out into the field, make yourself known. 2, pick somebody you already know, somebody that you notice always works safely. 3, tell them how much you personally appreciate what they do safely. And 4, just do a little fist pump. Yeah, I did a good job. Yeah, positive reinforcement as you walk away. It's a good thing. You're doing a good things to that culture. And the reason why I stress this, the reason why I separated them from activity 1 and activity 2, because sometimes you'll have people that always work safely. They're like the wands in that scenario. They're always committed to safety. They're always wearing their PPE. They're always doing their tasks safely. They always lock out, tag out, always complete their inspections. And sometimes, unfortunately, as leaders and safety professionals, we go, oh, we don't need to talk to that lady. They're always good. They're doing a great job. We don't need to talk to them. They know it. They know, right? No, sometimes that person needs that bump. They need to be congratulated. They need to be rewarded. They need that positive reinforcement. It helps them continue in that effort. It helps them build upon themselves and then start building upon their team members. Those are your future leaders, folks. Those are the people that you need to focus on and start building now. Find those people and start giving them those gold star stickers. They need it. So that's the end. I could probably talk for another 45 minutes just because I like to talk, and you guys have probably already felt it already. I'm a bit hyper. Thank you so much. And I just want to do a little recap before I leave. So remember that safety is a practice. Embrace the practice. Teach your peers in leadership to do that same. Develop rapport with your team. Rapport is it's a big deal. If you guys want to look up some cool stuff online, look up therapeutic rapport. And it's a good subject. Positive reinforcement does go a long way. And it sounds like from the breakout group earlier, it sounds like a lot of people are already using positive reinforcement. That's a good thing. Safety isn't just a slogan or a sign on the wall. Lead by example at all times. Show your team you mean business about safety, about the culture. Try your hardest never to falter here, regardless of the circumstance. And just remember that your audience, because they are your audience, they're always watching. Send the strong message that production is not prioritized over safety. In order to promote strong safety culture, your team must believe this to be true. And I've highlighted believe because some people say, your team members on the floor, they might also say safety is number one. Yep, safety is number one. Do they really fundamentally believe that safety is number one? Do they really feel that safety is number one? That there's no competing priorities over there, that they're always going to have, their leadership always wants them to go the same way, go home the same way they arrive to work. Try your best to eliminate or mitigate problems as they arise. Mitigation's great. I mean, I might have some OSHA professionals on this call, but I'm just throwing it out there, right? Mitigation is a tool. If you need to mitigate something temporarily, I've spoken to enough people in the field to know that if you need to mitigate it, at least it's kind of bolstering that, right? It's helping reinforce your safety culture. If you need to do something now, go ahead and do it, even if it's kind of ugly. Even if it's a bunch of caution tape and you're redirecting traffic one way because you've got construction work going on over here, just do it so you can mitigate that problem of those potential hazards. People will remember that you were a firm but fair leader. They'll remember that. I have spoken to many people I've worked for 4 different manufacturing industries in safety. And I've spoken to many people where they go, yeah, Nancy, like 20 years ago, she was the best. Why was she the best? Because she was firm and she was fair. She was fair with inconsistency with her safety practices, but she was firm when somebody would do something unsafe. And she was our best supervisor. I get that all the time. Accountability, you can use that as an opportunity for employee growth. Accountability can be used to grow your employees, but balance that with positive reinforcement to the best of your ability. Don't be an office-only safety professional. Just don't. Again, personal experience, production operator, talking to production operators, being in that team, that will destroy you if you spend 90% of all your time in the office and your team never sees you. Commit to spending time in the field, and this is a golden opportunity for you just to do some basic routine rapport building and just simple engagement with your team. And that, my friends, is the end of me talking your ear off for 45 minutes. Thanks very much. I really appreciate it. And I will stop sharing now.
Charles, thank you so much. Very valuable. We're going to open it up for a Q&A in just a minute for anyone who has any questions as we wrap up. But I want to remind you, as you leave the Zoom session here, you're going to be asked to complete a 1-minute survey. And we'd love for you to give us your feedback, because that's the only way we have a way to improve as we learn and get feedback from you. Also, just thank you for being here. Next month's forum will be in recognizing mental health issues in the workplace. May coming up is Mental Health Month. I think it's associated as, and so we want to get ready for that, especially with the way things are in society now. It's getting rough out there. But also, if you want to reach out, if you'd like us to reach out to you for any training needs or questions you might have, or get in touch with Charles, you can contact me in the chat. We'll make sure we connect you with whomever you need to be connected with. All right, Charles, if you're up for it, some Q&A. What do you think?
Yeah, only if somebody wants to ask me about my favorite movie.
Yeah, if you've got a question to ask, you can ask it in the chat. A lot of thank yous, a lot of great jobs. We also encourage you just to unmute and ask if you've got any questions, if anybody does. Otherwise, you're free to go. This will conclude it. Any questions for Charles?
Oh, look, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I just wondered, how did you overcome, I guess you could say, pushback from management? Because just in my experiences, I've been in about 6 years now, And typically the rapport I have with employees and frontline workers has been pretty good. My biggest obstacles have always been supervision and management and try to sell them on safety.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So sometimes frontline management, they can be the salty people that I was talking about. I've been there. Grain and feed that's a pretty, you've got some people there that are pretty salty in grain and feed, and some management who are just like, oh, very firm all the time. No, you're not going to be that safety professional who's going to come in here and tell me what to do. Honestly, it really is just about breaking that barrier down. Not breaking that person down, breaking that barrier down, and enforcing that time spent with them, making them understand that that you're not just going to be some pencil pusher who's going to come in and start dictating all of these new policies and programs. Take them out to lunch. Take them out to lunch if you can. Spend some time with them. Get personal with them. Ask them about their family. Engage with them. And this is, something that I talked about during the presentation. Give them those gold star positive reinforcements for the things that they are doing safe, and you soften them up a little bit like butter, and they'll be more willing to kind of react to you. But sometimes you got to dig a little deep to develop that rapport with your management team. I know that sounds kind of airy and ambiguous, like I know it does, but you really do. You need to establish relationship with your management team, just like you would with people on the floor, and reach out to them at a personal level. And once they start to get to know you a little bit, and you start to get to know them a little bit, it becomes more comfortable for you to kind of convince them to do the right thing. I hope that helped.
It does. Thank you.
We have from Julie, she asked, it's kind of a goofy one, but great presentation, she said, and thank you. And what's your favorite movie? Something inspiring? Somebody
actually asked me that. That's awesome. Yes. I love that. My favorite movie is a movie that came out in 1984 called The Last Dragon, with Bruce Leroy and Sho'nuff. Okay. That is, I have a painting of Sho'nuff in my house. That's how dedicated, and it is an inspiring movie. It is an inspiring movie.
Are you wearing Converse?
Yeah, I know, right? Kiss my Converse. Yeah, I know. That movie. It was just so crazy to me as a kid, and it is kind of an inspiring film. It's a martial arts film, but it is inspiring. I actually saw somebody there. I think it was Bryant from Sholey IPN. That's where I started my safety gig.
Yes, hi Charles. I was just about to ask a question. It's great to meet you. That's one of the reasons I took the webinar, is because I saw your name, and your name still comes across on all of our safety programs, and your footprint is still definitely here. So cool. It's great to meet you. It's great to hear from you. And I'm not surprised when they still talk about you. Really exemplify a safety professional. So it's great to meet you.
Thanks,
one of the questions I wanted to ask was, how did you go about mitigating, and this is probably a difficult question, but I get employees all the time that come to me with fake injuries just to get into the workers' comp system and take time off and get those benefits. How did you mitigate that? We've done a couple steps here. We've done a great job as far as reducing that list, and I'm sure the Merced plant, we've always struggled with the fake injuries. So
yeah, that's a tough one. You're gonna hate that. A lot of safety professionals on this call they're like, oh my God, it's so hard. It's so hard. The one thing that you can do is, to the absolute utmost best of your ability, is to do a root cause analysis of that injury, and make sure that you have a super, super strong reporting program, that people are reporting everything, even the smallest injuries right off the bat. And then unfortunately, you're going to have to work a little bit with the folks that are heading your workman's comp division. If you do have folks that head workman's comp, or unless you're the person with the hat, you're going to have to work with them on potentially doing some investigation portion of it. They may actually have to do that. They may actually have to spend the money and do the time to get investigators to investigate that injury, to determine whether or not that team member is saying the right thing. I've had personal experience with that. I had one team member who was in a bar fight, and everybody knew that he was in a bar fight. And he came to work and he told his team lead, I injured my shoulder over there doing that. And the team leader said, "Are you okay?" And the team member said, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'll just get back to work." Team leader said, "All right, cool, get back to work." And then a day or two later, he went to his doctor. They deemed it as an industrial injury. That team leader was actually demoted, I think, because they didn't do the proper reporting on time. They didn't do an initial investigation. They didn't capture photos. They didn't do all the stuff they need to do. They didn't really talk to the team member at all. And about after a lawsuit and all kinds of stuff, about 6 months later, that team member was a bodybuilder with a brand new Harley Davidson and a brand new Corvette and $100,000 in his pocket. It sucks that those are some of the, the kind of the stories that need to be told from that aspect. But that's why I say, if you develop a strong reporting culture, tell your team, report all injuries, regardless of how slight they are, report those injuries. It
It's really
helps.
important to be consistent too. That was one of I've ran into similar issues where especially in the construction industry, as a safety person, I can't be out to every single job site all the time. So having stuff reported to my foreman and hearing it 3, 4, 5 days later, they go, "Oh, hey, by the way,"
Yeah.
that's where I run into the same thing. Is I can't prove or disprove that it happened on the job. So it's important to get people reporting everything. And I always tell the story of a guy that got a real small sliver in his hand. It was just a metal sliver, and he was a giant pain in the butt. He was always giving me a hard time. And so one day he calls me across the project and goes, "Hey, I got a sliver in my hand. Do you want to know about that stuff too?" He told me about it, and I was like, "Just because you mentioned it, I'm going to write it down." 3-day weekend. Monday comes around. I get a call from my site superintendent saying, "Hey, I got a guy, it's 5:30 in the morning, but he says he got injured and he told you about it." I'm like, "I'm just getting down to my desk. I don't know what you're talking about." Go in and shows me his hand. It's the size of a softball.
Oof.
It got infected. And everybody thought that he was lying because he came in at 5:30 in the morning and he's like, "I think it's from the sliver." And he's like, "I told the safety guy." And I'm like, "You told the safety guy that you got a sliver?" So they all thought he was full of crap. And I pull out my little notepad from last week and I was like, "Steve Vincenti, sliver, he got a boo-boo in his right hand." And that, I tell everybody that because you tell people to report it no matter how small it is, because you never know when it's going to come back and bite you in the butt.
Mhm.
But having that culture where people are going to report stuff and they may not want to do anything with it, but the fact that you're empowering your employees, and it might be counterintuitive to your management team. It's been a big thing. All the places I've worked is they hear me encouraging people to report stuff, even though it's ridiculously small. But in the long run, it protects the employer, because let's say that guy who's got that little tear in his shoulder and is like, "Oh, that pain kind of hurts," but he doesn't want to do anything about it. It gives you the ability to track those injuries long term. And it kind of gives you the ability to say, "I understand that you don't want to go see a doctor right now, but that is an injury that typically we need to get looked at to rule out underlying damage or injuries that are larger than may appear right now." I had the long-time journeyman carpenter. He had something like that happen where he felt a little twinge in his arm. He ignored it and ended up having a full separation of the tendon on his shoulder, taking the garbage out of his house. So while it was not an injury that occurred at work, it was absolutely aggravated by, he had that initial injury, but we had to go back and prove that this was a pre-existing condition before he went to take the garbage out at his house. But those are a couple of examples of where, if you can get people to report everything, no matter how small, and then you can get them into the doctor at the right time, it shows people that they can't game the system in the way that maybe you're having people having an experience right now, where folks are coming in and it's like, "Oh, I got hurt. My knees hurt. Yeah, my knees hurt."
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of injuries you're having happen, but if you can get people to consistently report, and get your managers to do or managers, your supervising individuals, to get them to do their due diligence consistently every single time, that is where I put my focus. And a lot of those fake BS injuries just kind of fell off and they started to disappear. And I mean, we still have them.
Yeah, they happen.
They're much fewer and much farther in between.
But you got to remember also that people want to report their injuries and you're like, that's great, it happened at work, thank you for reporting. Well, let's go ahead and first of all, let's get you drug tested. And then it's like, whoa, forget it. So
Right.
that's another scare tactic, say, hey, you got injured. All right, well, our policy is we have to do a post-incident drug screening. And all of a sudden, once that word gets out, everyone's not so quick about making up these injuries, trying to get paid.
I have a unique perspective. I actually manage a work comp program. So I come at it from both angles of safety and accountability and triage, immediate reporting of everything, and post-drug test. Those three things drop the hammer and kind of cut out all the BS. And what we've also learned is taking aggressive action and taking care of the employee right away when needed shows positive reinforcement that they do care, that they do get personal attention. And what's good for us, I mean, we've literally had people say, hey, we got hurt. They talk to a nurse. The nurse literally says, hey, you know what? You're going to take 2 Advil, go home. We'll check back with you in the morning. It's also about that continual communication and engagement, because when employees get hurt, they need to know that they will be taken care of. And then to cut out the Monday bad actors that we all do know, one of the things that we actually implemented was an incentive program for the employees that if they see bad actors, they can report the incident on behalf of defending the company, and they get rewarded if the claim becomes fraudulent and any type of action is taken. So we incentivize the employee to hold everyone accountable, because you got a line worker that someone's on modified duty, they really shouldn't be. And then you have someone working really hard, that creates bad morale within the organization. And then you got distrust with everything going on. So I come from the aspect of I'm new to safety, and I'm really excited of where this group is. I'm going to be engaging more, but I actually come from the work end aspect of insurance. So the challenges you're having, Brian, are really legit. And it really is about holding accountable, early reporting, showing good action and bad action right away, either way, because it goes back to accountability. But the fair, what was it, firm but fair? I really like that, because that's very true. And that action shows forward to everyone watching. The audience is always watching.
Yeah.
So when things are done correctly, it reinforces the good behavior. Bad actors can be held accountable by the action taken from leadership all the way down. So just want to chime in, because when you said you have, I'm like, this is the kind of world I deal with fraudulent claims. And you got to drop the hammer, but then you got to have accountability.
Can I ask you, Jesse, really quick?
Yeah.
So, I have a similar program where we don't incentivize that. We don't incentivize reporting, but we do have a personal responsibility requirement where employees are to report these things on behalf of each other, just from the liability standpoint in California. But just going back to the drug testing thing. So I know, and I worked in private for 20 years, and in private, it was pretty standard. Somebody got injured, drug testing was a part of it. But now I work for the government, for the city, and that is not part of their process. And my understanding is that, they have unions, and and that's what I was wondering, is that how is it that a union can come in and override this type of protocol when we know that it actually is, in the best interest of the organization? Is this something that I can push for, or do you think I'm just kind of lost?
It's not just a union. It's not just
the union. They're their own law. You can't fight or
Cal OSHA now says they were very suspect about random drug testing for any incident. So you have to show probable cause before you really can get that to stick. So you have to watch that tool.
Yeah, because from a Cal OSHA perspective, they may say, hey, are people not reporting injuries because they're afraid of being drug tested? So it very is kind of like it's a thin line there.
Gotta have a reasonable
However, make sure
Reasonable suspicion.
Yeah,
if when you're sending somebody to the MPN, your medical provider network, okay, most of you guys have probably checked off with your workers' comp company that yes, you would like them to be given the cup to go pee in. And it's basically for an action. Like if somebody drives a forklift off of a loading dock, you dang well you want them drug tested. Okay. Here's the thing. If you find that they're on something and they caused their own mishap, driving one of your vehicles, driving one of your equipment, workers' comp can actually ask you guys, do you want that employee to take care of their medical bill? Or do you want this on workers' comp? Okay, so you dang well better drug test those folks. We have people walking off scaffolding. We have people jumping off stuff they shouldn't be jumping. You know why? Because they're high when they're drunk. And you guys have to nip that in the bud. I get calls all the time. Hey, the guys from the superintendents from a certain building site saw 3 of my guys smoking a joint up on top of scaffolding. What do I do? What's your policy? You got to have a
should have a
policy.
reasonable suspicion
Okay.
clause to.
Yeah, you have to have.
It is all about that drug and alcohol policy in their handbook. That's essential as well.
Absolutely, and it
Yeah.
should be in your IIPP too, that you have the right, if somebody has a mishap that's that bad. I'm not talking about, I'm gonna go to the MPN because I have carpal tunnel. No, we're talking about action-related injuries, okay? And yeah, that does knock off that Monday morning, they had the injury on Friday, they got something in their system. And they think that if they wait till Monday to report their injury, because they know they're gonna go to the clinic. But most of the stuff that people have in their system now does last over the weekend. So there's a lot of things, the Cal OSHA was trying to, it wasn't Cal OSHA, it was OSHA that was trying to push the no randoms, be really cautious of who you send to the clinic and get a drug testing, et cetera, et cetera. That was OSHA, and it was because they were so afraid people weren't going to report their injuries. If you send somebody to the ER will not automatically do a drug test. You have to actually call or find out how to get that person drug tested. So there's in California, it's a wackadoodle, area, but you got to protect yourself as a company if your people are high. And,
I've got.
Well, come next year, you can't test for marijuana anymore. That's something the governor signed off.
Not for an accident. That's if you're gonna try to hire them.
That's for anything. You can no longer test for marijuana.
So
Something you should look into.
I'm gonna plug something really quick here for the team to kind of veer off a minute, because I really want to throw this out there, especially Bryant, because this is something that you guys might want to look into, but something positive for our organization that we did, and we've seen a tremendous ROI here, is an athletic trainer, as an on-site athletic trainer or preventative care specialist.
We actually had one at one point.
Really?
We had one. There was a dedicated, not nurse.
That room, yeah.
They called it a health practitioner. Where if employees got a bruise or they were feeling ill, they can go get checked out. And just again, going back to budgeting and priorities, they got sidetracked. So that's something we've been pushing to get back, but
it's a good one.
And I think in general, the workers' comp in California is just not a good help for us sometimes. I mean, I've had 2 claims in the past year where employees, we've proven it's not a work-related injury. They've gone litigation and they've gone compensated for falsifying an injury. And again, it's just ridiculous that an employee can get 10,000,
The rights people
15,000
have in
for
California
lying.
are egregious.
It's hard.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's ridiculous. And there's no way to fight it because the workers' comp insurance will tell us, well, it's cheaper to settle with them now than to go into litigation and spend double or triple that. So it's just sort of like, all right, let's settle then. But
Yeah. You gotta
I
look
wish
at-
there was an easy button. I wish there was an easy button.
yeah,
This is the cost.
this is not a workplace injury, it's immediately eliminated, but once they lawyer up, it's just, we can't win, so.
If you, one of the benefits for us, at least, that we've seen from incorporating an athletic trainer is we've actually seen those cases of false claims kind of go down. Because when we've got people who kind of start to complain about soft tissue injuries specifically, like if you've got your athletic trainer, that's what their dedicated field is.
I got one yesterday.
Send them there.
So I gotta talk to today about it, so.
Yeah. Well, we'll be like, have you seen, her name is Carly. We'll go, have you seen Carly? Go see Carly. And then we start that process. And then, Carly is very knowledgeable in her field. So she's able to be like, no, this is not what they're saying it is, right? Or she'll go out into the field and she'll go look at what they're doing, and she'll go, well, you can't injure that by lifting
Right.
here. Like it's not connecting. And just having that perspective, you've got the positive reinforcement approach because she's very positive and she gives the team member the ability to speak to her and she's approachable. And then they're actually going out into the field and maybe verifying or justifying some of those actions that may have potentially caused that soft tissue injury. And also there's the accountability portion that's, kind of an underlying accountability portion. If you got your athletic trainer or preventative care specialist going, you can't stub your toe by hitting your nose, then sometimes it helps, and then those team members go, maybe I shouldn't be throwing this out there, right, as a potential claim. It's very hard though. What your question is very hard to mitigate that, and it's everybody on this call is probably feeling that in one shape or another.
Well, like you said, it's a one bite at a time, right? It's an
Mhm.
ongoing battle. So
Yep.
there it is, what it is. But,
Yep.
yeah.
Strong reporting culture.
Yep.
All right, we want to wrap up in about 3 minutes. So any other questions? Thank you for being here. And Charles, again, thank you so much. I'm sure this conversation go on another half an hour because there's a lot here.
Oh,
Any
We're
other
going day about
questions?
this.
Yeah, We'll
totally.
wrap it up.
Hey, I just wanted, this is Ernesto from the city of Stockton. Just wanted to say thank you to Charles. Great presentation. Really would like your contact info. So if you email it to us or put it in the chat, that'd be wonderful.
Cool.
Yeah,
I'll
and
put
we
it
will
in
be
the
sending
chat.
out. Okay, great. We'll be sending out a link to this video so you can review it later. And Charles did make his slide presentation available as well, so you'll get those in an email either today
R&D.
or tomorrow.
R&D.
R&D.
Rip off and duplicate.
Hey, love it.
That'll work.
That's great. Any other final comments or questions for Charles? Wow,
Thanks, team.
I think we're set. It's a miracle.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us. Have a happy rest of your week. We will talk to you again, I'm sure, very soon. Thank you.
Thanks
again,
for
Charles.
listening.